Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Iterable's office hours. Thanks so much for joining. Today we'll be going over the API Explorer docs and how to export some metrics from that, and just the general use of how to use that, even if you're not a technical developer. I'll be going ahead and sharing my screen. So let me know if anyone has any questions, and feel free to chat in. I'll do my best to answer anything that comes up. All right. All right, to start off, let me go over here to our API docs. So whenever you're in Iterable, you'll notice a few links at the bottom of every page. You'll see a link to our API docs, as well as our support portal, um, the status of Iterable at the moment, as well as our email address to the support team. Feel free to click on this to go to our API docs, and I've gone ahead and brought it up here. This lists all of our different APIs in each category. These are all able to perform real API calls that link to your Iterable project. So of course, take caution when using it. Make sure nothing is edited that shouldn't be. But today we'll be focusing on the export endpoint. And this allows you to export metrics across all of your campaigns, across your entire project in either CSV format or JSON format. And for everyday users, including myself, it's most convenient to export to CSV because then you have a file to work with and view that way. Whereas, of course, if you are using the APIs to connect this data to a third-party reporting software, it might make more sense to do it in JSON. So as far as using the API docs, there's one important thing to know is all you have to do is insert your API key here. So I'm going to go back to our test environment here, our training project. And you can grab that API key by going to the left-hand side and going to Integrations and then API Keys. And API keys essentially allow you to give permission to something other than your Iterable project to get information or add information into your Iterable project. What permissions are allowed, you can decide here, and you can create new API keys whenever you want. For now, this API key has full permissions, but to use the API docs, it depends which endpoint you're using. For just exporting metrics, we would need read access. So I'm going to double click this, copy it, and switch back to our API docs. Now all you have to do is paste in that key. You don't have to press enter. Actually, it's better if you don't. You just leave that key there, and then any API endpoint you use, it'll be live, it'll be ready to go. So just as an example, to do something common, let's say I want to see all of the fields that exist in my project. All of the user fields, I can just hit this button, try it out, and it'll show me everything that exists. So, obviously email exists, that's common, that's how we key our users. And any additional fields that you add, such as first name, last name, anything extra. All right, let's close this out and go back down to export. So this endpoint is quite powerful. You can export a large volume of data, and for that reason, we do have a rate limit of 4 requests per minute. So just keep that in mind if you're trying to export a bunch of things all at once. You can export a variety of different categories, and all of these will populate one row of a CSV for each event of that category. So if you choose email send, and let's see, you can choose before today. I'm going to keep this real simple and broad at first. Let's just export all email sends that ever took place before today in my project. If I hit try it out, it takes a little minute to gather all that data, and depending on the size of your project, it might be too much for the web page to handle. That's up to your browser and the device you're trying it out on. But of course, in our training environment, it's a smaller amount of data, so you can this should work, and you'll be able to see the format that the data is in. If it is too much data, of course, we can restrict it to something smaller, like just today or just yesterday, as well as narrow in the date range here. All right, here we go. So as you can see, it gives you the headers for each type of content, such as the campaign ID, when it was created, who it was sent to, and each of these rows represents one email send event. Here we go, one email send event. So each of these would be a user. If you were to send a campaign to 1,000 people, that one campaign would result in 1,000 rows in this file. So quite clearly, this data adds up quickly. And we can also choose other categories here. So to get a little more interesting, I'm going to choose email opens. I'm going to choose all time, and I'm going to restrict it a little. So let's say I have a campaign ID that I'm interested in particular. I can choose just that campaign ID, and it'll give me all the email opens of that campaign. Right away, as you can see, it's just that campaign ID and who opened it. It'll also tell you what the IP address is, and what template was used, as well as what device it was opened on. We can also restrict data by date. So for convenience, it tells you what format these have to be in. So as you can see, it's the year, the month, the day, as well as the time, and any adjustment to the time zone. So for simplicity's sake, I'm going to paste that in there. And from here, it's easy to just edit it and adjust it a little bit if I want to. So this is a fairly narrow time range here. We can try it out. And it'll return more information there. So as you can see, because I didn't restrict what campaign ID was used, it even gave me other information for a different campaign that was opened. This is very flexible. For some users, some of these fields might not be necessary, such as let's say message ID isn't that important right now, and you'd rather not clutter your CSV file with that. You can double click this, highlight that, and omit that field. So anytime you perform an export, it'll get rid of that column. Okay, looks like we got a raised hand. If there's a question, please chat it in. I'll be happy to answer. All right. See if there's any questions here. Perfect. Beyond this, it might be interesting to look at it from this limited window. But if you ever want to actually download the file, you can select this entire URL here. So let's see if I can do this. You can select the entire thing and paste that into any browser. Hit enter, and it'll download that file for you. So any export that you perform in the docs is now editable for you to analyze, perform reports, make graphs, narrow in on things, sort by when it was created, or any other metric you want. And like I said, for the majority of projects out there, the data is quite large for how much is opened in any given time range. And if it's too large for a browser to handle and the page crashes for any reason, my recommendation is to use this start date and end time, and let's see right here, start date and end time, and do a very small range like I did. So this is 3 minutes, but you can make it even smaller if you wanted, make it a minute. When you do that and try it out, as you saw, it puts that data into the URL itself. From there, this might be messy if you do it in the browser, so I would probably paste that into a separate doc. You can edit this URL as you want, and then paste it back into the browser, and it'll download that file for you, as large as it is, up to the limit that Excel can handle. And the file will still download even if it's larger than Excel's limit, but of course you'd have to open it in a different file for that. And a quick reminder, when it comes to these exports, the start date and end time, right now the format that it's in, the +00, that means that it's going to be in UTC time. So be sure to mentally adjust for whatever time zone you're in, whether you're on the West Coast, whether you're on the East Coast, or in an entirely different time zone. Uh, all of the timestamps of these actions, such as email sends, email opens, those timestamps are all recorded in UTC time, so Universal Coordinated Time. And like I said, there's a variety of different options here. Definitely have some fun with it. It's very flexible for what type of content comes out, and it's very robust for what's returned. If an email is sent and it's a triggered campaign, and there was additional data fields included in that trigger, then those fields will be included at the end of that email send event. If you're sending custom events, those will be recorded, and it'll tell you what the name is, what type of custom event took place. You can also get information about all of your users in your project, and it'll give you information about which data fields exist for what users, and who has those fields or who doesn't have those fields. So you can do very large exports and transfer this data into a variety of different applications. So as you can see, all of these categories also exist whenever you're exporting a single campaign, but this data could be received across all campaigns in your entire project. And of course, if you have multiple projects and want to get that information for each project, you could keep the doc the same and get ready to hit the button, and then just swap out the API key here. Move into your other project, grab that API key, again from the left-hand nav bar, integrations, API keys. You can grab that, replace what's up here, and do another export right away. So this could be interesting in case you ever want to get very detailed metrics for as many different campaigns as you want. Are there any questions so far? All right, looks like we got a question. Is there a limit on request size? Are large requests delivered serially? It's a great question. So as you can see, we've selected the export to CSV, and there's not a limit on request size. There is a limit on how many requests you can make per minute, and large requests do take slightly longer to generate. So it may take a minute to kick off the call, and it may take minutes. It could take quite a while if you have an extremely large request, but it will continue to download. So like I said, it might not work if you hit this button right here, but if you use a small time range and then edit the URL and make it a very large time range, it'll still work properly. If you paste this into the browser, it'll just download a CSV file that might be 80, 100, 200 megabytes large, to the point where Excel can't open it, but we'll continue to generate that file because it's a CSV file. That's a great question. So let me know if there's anything else. Perfect. And as you can see, some of these are fairly standard, like when it comes to email opens or email clicks. Information such as custom events and purchase events will have a lot more data that's customized to your Iterable environment. All right, got another question here. How does array data work in here? That's a great question. Let me see if there's any examples on a user's profile here. Get fields, try it out. So it looks like in our test environment, we don't have any array fields right now. But if I choose email unsubscribe, so I believe we're updating the way we return data for the email unsubscribe endpoint. Previously, it's just been a single integer for what channel ID existed or what resulted in the person being unsubscribed. But because it's returned like this, it'll populate the entire array as one cell. So if you were to open up that file that we downloaded previously, if anything was an array, let's see now if I can bring this up. If anything was an array, it would populate it all within a single cell. So it might be a few numbers here, add some more numbers there, followed by that. So it would squish it all into one cell. That's something to be aware of. So please let me know if there's more questions. I'm also going to go over some fairly common things, such as updating a user profile. Oh, another question, great. How is this different from the CSV export? That's a great question. Yeah, the question is, how is this different from a CSV export? So as you know, if we go into an iterable environment, there's a few different options for exporting. And this export from the API is similar, but it's more thorough. It captures it does a lot of steps all at once. So if you're at this page and you want to export some data of a few different campaigns, you can do that. You can export them to CSV directly. From this page though, it just gives you the overview metrics. It gives you the total number of sends, the total number of opens, just those very quick numbers for you to look at. So it's great if you want to do an overview of a lot of time, that kind of thing. If you want to get into the details and learn who it was sent to specifically, like their email address, or if there were 100 opens, who opened them and exactly what time did they open them. Of course, you could do that by going into the campaign and once this loads, you can choose the export option and then choose the email open category. So you could do this and it would tell you of this one campaign for each open, who was it, what was the timestamp, etc., etc. The APIs do this type of export where it's very granular of who did what and exactly what timestamp, but it does that for any and all campaigns unless you narrow it down. So right now if I did email opens, it's going to tell me every email open ever. So across all my campaigns that ever happened. So in that sense, it's more robust. It's similar, but it gets more data across more time. And if you're ever curious about what else APIs can do, you can update user profiles. It'll tell you here what's required, what's not. In general, even if it says email is optional, it's best to include email anyway for these other endpoints. And if you want a starting point, you can always click this and it'll populate this with an example. So if you want to try this out sometime, again, be cautious because this is making live API calls. So there is the chance to edit, adjust, or even accidentally create additional user fields that you might not want. So of course, be cautious with this, but you can update user profiles or create new users this way. You could delete users this way. You can send new custom events to us. There's a lot you can do through APIs, and honestly, in general, if you're just making a one-off call or something, the UI is great for just about everything. But it is nice to know what your options are for using this API Explorer and how to feel comfortable with it. Just remember to paste in your API key, and from then on, anything you try out will be live. It will function. If you have questions about this, definitely utilize the live chat feature to talk to your customer success team. We'll be happy to provide you more info, point you in the right direction, or just give you a reminder that for some of these categories, it's going to be a lot of data. So your browser might not be able to display all of it within one section here. If there are any other questions, feel free to ask them now. I'll be on the call for another couple minutes, but that's all I have today. Thank you very much, everyone. All right, we got a question. How do you update a user's profile through the API? Great question. So that's the users and then update endpoint. So like I said, you can click this to pre-populate it. And then this is going to be our data fields section. In our test environment, there's no user IDs. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this section here. Once you're in the data fields, you would put in quotes whatever the name of the field is that you're trying to update. You put a colon, and then if it's a string, you would wrap this part in quotes as well. You can put a comma, add additional fields. Age, I wouldn't want that to be a string. I'd want that to be a number. So no quotes. Likes chocolate. This one could be a Boolean field. So I'm going to say, again, no quotes. This is true. Then I'm going to say, last time on Iterable. And then if I want it to be a date, it does have to follow a format. So I'm going to pull that format example from before, paste that in, and I could adjust that here. So today's date is the 25th. And for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to zero this out. And because this is in quotes, but it's in a very specific format, this will get labeled as a date field. And then I have to decide whose profile this gets added to. So again, this does have to be valid JSON. So there's a couple of nifty tools out there, like jsonlint.com. I can hit validate, and it says, oh, I didn't do this right. As you can see, I forgot a comma there. So I hit validate. Oh, here we go. Again, missed a comma. Validate. There we go. We're good to go. I can copy this, paste it in. Oh, thank you very much. Much better. Want to make sure everything is right. All right, and then if I make the call, it works. And if I hop on over to that user's profile, it'll show you that those calls went through. It'll say age. Anything else that I added, let's see now, is last time on Iterable. It even adjusted my first name. So all the information went through properly. But you can do this for any profile you want. And this is a quick example for different data types. They do have to be formatted properly. So if I came back, like age is already a number type. So if I were to come back and accidentally put quotes around it, this call, it would give me a success response, but the update on the user profile wouldn't go through. So again, API docs are sensitive and you can do a lot with them, but it is easy to make mistakes. So if there are questions, reach out to your team. We're here to help. All right, everyone, thank you so much. I'm going to be closing out this screen share. Again, I appreciate your time and attention, and thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.